Yo, what's up, everybody? Scotty, GLL, coming at you with a special episode. It's a client of mine. Um, will go by the name D right now. He's been working with me for about, I'd say, 3 months. He's done quite a few sessions with me, and the guy's been phenomenal, man. He's been really on point. He's not what most people would think to be your beginner student. He's had plenty of success in the past. He's probably slept with over 100 women. He's, financially in the 1 percentile of earners. So this is why when I hear these stupid red pill talking points about make your money, women come as a byproduct stuff as the formula to success, I get people like my man D over here. It just counteracts everything these guys talk about. So anyway, with that being said, I want to introduce you to a good friend of mine and client, D. D, why don't you introduce yourself quickly?
Thanks, Scotty. Yeah. So you are right. I don't probably fit the standard client profile. I'm a little older. I'm 45. Spent a lot of time building a business. It's been a successful one, and that's why I prefer to stay anonymous. I
Mhm.
actually don't have really much of a digital footprint at all, and that's how I prefer it. And had a lot of success in my 20s and 30s. Moved down here to South Florida where the women are a little different and it's simply a hyper competitive market. And I remembered you from the old GLL days. So I came to you with a unique set of challenges. Nine guys out of 10 would look at me. I remember when we first worked together, you said, okay, you really have low to no anxiety just going after the girls that you like.
Mm.
But there are still a lot of things that I needed to work on because it takes something extra if you want elite level girls and you want them to like you for you. And that's what I wanted. And, I remember our very first time getting together with you, we were in Brickell, and you said, hey, man, do you see anything that you like? And I said, yep. And I thought, I'm going to show this guy what I'm made of. And I went right up to some hot blonde who was having lunch or drinks and half doing work at the same time, did my normal thing, got her phone number, walked away. And I kind of looked at you like, what do you think of this guy, in front of you? Because nine guys out of 10, probably higher than that, would say, whoa, D, you're a rock star. And yet I told you I'm really dealing with low interest, a lot of phone numbers, but a lot of flakes, things like that. And you said, I would give that a 4 or 5 out of 10 interest level. And you were like, that's good. I'm glad you can do that. But that isn't where we need to be. And for me, immediately it just clicked. And I thought, I like this guy because he is delivering exactly what I wanted. I
Mm.
needed a specific set of professional eyes objectively saying, you got to do this if you want elite level chicks in South Florida. Doing regular stuff isn't enough. And you were very complimentary. You kind of wanted to see what I was doing to start with, what raw material you had to work with. And you said, look, man, you're doing all this kind of over the shoulder, almost construction worker catcall stuff of, hey, how you doing? And these chicks like your look and your vibe, and they are looking at you and even half stopping, willing to hear you out, but you're not taking it anywhere and you're not presenting yourself as a real sexual threat, as a real sexual option. And you
Mm.
gave me just a few different things that I put in place immediately that showed immediate result. I mean, it was stuff that was astounding. Here I am, 45 years old, and we had a session about a month ago where I pulled, I mean, it turned out to be an OnlyFans girl, which is somebody that I'm not really interested in. I don't like chicks that do so called sex work. I'm just not into that. Uh, but hot 22-year-old, middle of the day. We were, this close to making out. I was even, even at 45, I got my motor running a little bit. And, it was super easy to set up the date with her, got her all the way up here to Palm Beach County, stick her in an Uber, come all the way up. Had a great date with her, but, that's not going to be the kind of chick that I want to see long term. But it's like you took me to that place where it's like super hot chick who's basically making money being a hot chick in her early 20s. And I'm some 45-year-old grabbing her out of nowhere. And it was really because of your coaching. It was because you taught me specific things like, look, dude, you've got a lot, you bring a lot to the table already, but it comes off as just friendly and professional. You need to sexualize, you need to do this, this, and this. And the minute I did that, we lost count of how many super hot chicks were basically immediately in. And it became immeasurably easier. I think I sent you a screenshot and I said, look at this. I went from going to like a 70 or 80% flake rate to the opposite, to 4 out of 5, phone numbers immediately and enthusiastically showing up on the date. It was immediate and dramatic improvement.
Yeah, I mean, and just to chime in there, I think Dan, oh sorry, Dan, whatever you want to call him, he whatchamacallit, like he's not your typical 45-year-old guy. I mean, there was girls on the street that were giving feedback on the guy's look objectively, saying like, oh my God, this guy, is he a model? Like we just wanted to get a good gauge of, this guy's pulling like 22-year-old girls on the regular, getting them really interested and stuff like that. And, his thing, like I say, with most people, whatever level you're at, and if you're just having a hard time getting the results you want, if you peel the layers back at the end of the day, it always boils down to, not taking enough social risks and not being sexual enough, just not giving off that sexual vibe, and
Yes.
expressing that intent. We're all pretty good at this stage, like autopilot at holding platonic conversations if you're interested in stuff like that. We're all geared, our minds are just been trained and programmed at a very, very young age, with your parents, with school, with friends, this conversation. Now, when are we really tapping into the flirtatious sexual undertones and giving off a real, a sly look, a smirk? I mean, none of those elements of our character are really being utilized at all. It's not being practiced. It's not being promoted. It's not being incentivized. In fact, we're taught by Disney to be, a gentleman, give flowers, and we hear all these romance novels, and it's all just catered to the woman. You know what I mean? And that's not what really turns them on and arouses them anyway. When we get the rare gem of a book like Nancy Garden's My Secret Garden or whatever, and you hear their fantasies, even dating back to the 1940s, how they fantasize about this and fantasize about that. Men have been living with these lies of Disney stories and what your mom told you and friends, be a gentleman, which is not really a gentleman at the end of the day. It's just, don't be that sexual, threat, really, at the end of the day. Don't come off, and that, because that's regarded as creepy. But in essence, it's like when you're in a sexual authority and you're able to assert that dominance and that presence, it's turning the woman on. So
Yep.
it has to be completely transformed, and honestly, it needs to be practiced because it's dormant, and our default is always to go back to nice guy business mode, platonic exchange, transactional mindset. So this needs to, I could say I've been in the field long enough where, listen, I still have, slip ups too, where I'm in this sort of platonic thing. But for me, I jump back real quick into this, knowing when it's on with a girl and when to turn it off and when to turn it on,
Oh, yeah.
and that's the goal, is really to get to what Dan is saying here. And this is a guy with, over 100 women he slept with. He's, like in the 1 percentile of earnings. I mean, he's the best example that you can really come up with of, like, that stuff at the end of the day is not what's doing the trick. It's an interchanging of this mindset, and it's a shift in our perception and utilizing that sexuality to me is very much tied to like the ability to flirt with a girl too. You know, a lot of like sly flirting at the beginning is an opening. I'll call it more of a bridge to sexualizing and building like some sort of sexual tension between the woman, you know, but guys don't even
Mhm.
really know how to do that. You know, they keep it very, you know, professional, like what we're doing right now. This is a normal sort of platonic conversation that most people are always in this state at work, school, like I mentioned. So it's in all of us to do that, and we want to do it, but we don't know how to. So we often are regarded as creeps, or, you know, wow, that felt uncomfortable, because, you know, it's really ultimately pushing beyond our comfort zones, all this stuff.
So you just
uh,
dropped a lot of things that we could probably spend all night talking about. Scotty and I talk actually pretty regularly. We've developed a pretty good friendship almost immediately. I just liked
mhm.
you right away. I'll flatter myself a little bit and say I think you kind of, liked me a little bit right away. Like, okay, these are just two guys who look totally different and took two totally different paths in life, but we just got along well right off the bat. And when Scotty and I are out hitting on multiple groups of chicks, it's always a fun thing when we
Mm.
tell these chicks, yeah, we're friends. What? We don't look like we would be friends? And it always throws these chicks for a loop, and we always have a good time with it. So I mean, all that is fun, but you just dropped a bunch of gems that we could probably spend all night talking about. So one is I want to clarify something with the money stuff. It is absolutely true. They're not lying to you when they say if you garner a certain amount of success, women will come as a byproduct. They will.
Mm.
So will men, right? All of a sudden you got little bros, little dudes, little hangers on that want a little piece of you or just want to be around you because if you earn a lot of money, you can do a lot of things and facilitate a lot of fun. So, money attracts not just women, but it attracts people. The
Mm.
question that I asked myself is, are these the people I want to attract and I want in my life? And the answer is completely no, categorically no. I wanted a woman who wants me for me. And the other really funny thing is, I think like the last two sessions me and you did running around, I was in gym clothes, right? Like the first time I was dressed up kind of nice.
Mhm.
I was just in gym clothes. And you said, look at that. Chicks are so perceptive, especially down here. You can't hide who you are. You could be in gym clothes and they still know you're that guy because you handle yourself a certain way and you communicate a certain way. And I said, I think you're right. you know, I think even me, you, and another friend of ours, we'll call him Jay, we
Yeah.
were having dinner at the end of a night and a guy came in off the street to ask us for money. And you said, look at that. He sat right next to you and asked
Mm.
you. Why did he ask you? Because these people are practiced at spotting it. And I was, again, just in gym clothes. I was in like a sleeveless t shirt and shorts. So I wouldn't say that those guys, that it's completely false what they're saying when they say, get your funds up and all the chicks will come. It's absolutely true. But from my perspective, that's a really hollow existence. Those are not the people that I want in my life the women view the man as completely interchangeable. He's just a wallet to expedite their Instagram life or whatever. So sure, those chicks exist, but in my experience, a lot more of them exist that are not like that. In fact, I was just out with we did a session. This is last month. We did a session, and I was so jazzed with all the results that I was getting. That was the night that I got 12 or 13 phone numbers in like 5 hours. all for super
Unbelievable.
hot chicks. You remember that
Yeah.
one
That was a crazy
with
session. That was
with like
an
two
epic
near
session.
makeouts in the middle of the day for like young 20-year-old super hot South Florida
Yeah,
chicks.
boys, I got our
Uh,
yeah, that's the key. I don't want this is like smoking hot girls. And you guys know I kind of prefer the dark skinned ladies, but like these are objective eights, nines, and tens in Brickell, like that are sub 25. It's incredible, man. It was some of the most remarkable, you know, cold approach I had seen in a really long time. Because to me, contrary to what we've been taught in the PUA world by Mystery and some of the quote unquote legends, that day game is just nothing but practice and it doesn't really count. It's night games where it's at and all this nonsense. I'm the complete opposite. I think day game is where the big boys play. That's where you really get to see your true skill level. One on one, mano a mano. You're gonna get instant feedback of where you stand on the pecking, the pecking order. In my opinion, I think day game, they're first off, they're not stationary sets. So to even stop a girl with a full head of steam who's not expecting to be macked on, that is extremely high level game, high level game. So I don't know where that came from. It's bullshit. It's probably because guys struggled with it, because I know for sure it's you have to be pretty elite, especially in some of these places like Brickell. And
oh
that
yeah.
wasn't just 12, street dweller hookers. These are like elite eight, nines, and tens. And these are not even my type, but objectively beautiful women. So go on, Dan.
Yeah, it's really funny you bring that up. So, our very first session together like that, I thought, wow, I'm with the right guy. He can spot these things. This is what I was looking for. But the second thing was, then after that, you said, well, why aren't you stopping these chicks? They're giving you looks when you holler at them. Why aren't you getting in front of them like a man? You're like, here, let me do it. You immediately picked out a chick that you like, who again I thought was objectively hot, even though not really normally my type. You were
Mm-hmm.
holding her hand within 30, 45 seconds. And then you continued to hold her hand and walked her all the way to a Starbucks down the street in Brickell where she was on her break. And I kind of gave your arm a little tug, like, hey, man, I get it, okay? Michael Jordan knows how to dunk the basketball. We need to get back. We need to get back to me. I'm impressed. You don't need, and I think you did that 3 or 4 more times. You were like, nope, nope, like this. And they stopped for you every single time without fail.
Mm.
And, that's when I thought, okay, this is absolutely a transferable skill to any type of girl that you want. Girls really are girls. Sure, there are some cultural differences. I'm not one of these guys who thinks that, that those things do not play a factor. Of course they do. And in fact, we've had a whole separate conversation about how I play a little bit better in areas like Brickell, and you play a lot better in areas like Wynwood that are a little more diverse and have more of your kind of girl. And you've always boiled that down to, well, what you really like, they can feel that and they reciprocate it. Whereas, it doesn't matter objectively if they're that hot, if they're like a 9 or 10 for most guys. If you're not into it, they feel that as well. And there's less interest on their end as well. But I remember that first day then, I was a little rattled and I tried to get chicks to stop and I couldn't really get them to stop. And then we went out that night and we had some fun. I had a poll, but they were semi professional. The whole thing was weird. We can talk about that another time. But then the next day, when we were at lunch together, I said, you said to me that I need to be more authoritative and more assertive with my stops. And that's what you're going to see from me today. And you said, that's great, man. I love hearing it. The very first one, right? It was that super hot brunette chick. She was with her friend. The friend didn't even interrupt. That's another major fallacy with the so-called community or game or whatever. That,
Mm.
oh, the chicks are gonna cock block. No, man. If the chick really likes you, the friend picks up on that and they just sort of leave off. Even in the middle of the day, that was the case. And just stopped her right away And that was the chick that was another near makeout in the middle of the day. And she said, look, you're going to have to excuse me. My friend's here. She's just visiting. Let's get together. Here's my number. And it's always a good sign when they text you first. You know, they're
Yeah.
immediately like, what's your name? And then I don't know why, but my years of experience have taught me if they text you first, this is a big signal for interest. And also, for whatever reason, if they text you their full name. I don't know why that is, but chicks that'll just dash off their first name, they tend to be a little bit lower interest for me than the chicks that'll immediately hit me up first and text their full name. And that chick did that right away. And you looked at me and you said, okay, you know, you promised me that you would. And that was an excellent stop. And you see the result. And then I had a few more of those that were good. And then I like backslid where all of a sudden like those bad habits were leaking back into my behavior, and of course I didn't get the result. And you said, do you see what happens? You know, you can't get a better before and after and then before again picture.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, just to piggyback off that a little bit, is that that whole thing with, yeah, it's transferable to whatever girl you like, is because like, uh, it's genuine. There's a level of like, performance based on, you would think it's the other way around. Like if you tell me to go do the exact same set on a completely ugly girl that I find not attractive whatsoever, there, the enthusiasms, it's not just, it's just not genuine attraction to me. It's not going
No,
to carry as much gravity. They're not going to be able to feel it at their fucking core,
right.
like, women could pick that up. We know who we like, people who like us, period. And that's who we're going to be, our eyes are going to light up on. We're going to give that little extra, the burden of performance or whatever. We're going to really want to, like, make a really deep impression upon this girl. Like, and we're giving it, and they could feel that, in a non-thirsty way, but you just, it's disingenuous to say, go open that girl. You really don't find her attractive. I mean, listen, I do have a rule towards the beginning. If you're completely still really hung up on just approach anxiety in general, that's a major issue that needs to be handled before we start even getting selective, because that's always going to be a problem.
Right.
That is something that, I give guys however much time they need to overcome the whole approach anxiety. And once that's pretty much subsided, then naturally you're going to gravitate towards the woman you find attractive anyway, really.
And
But
if you
yeah,
remember, even though you said you put me in the rare class of guys who had little to no anxiety, you know, I
yeah,
would go after the chicks that I wanted with very little inhibition. I still had some. I still had some, and in some situations, I remember me and you hit the mall, and I was cool hitting on chicks in the mall, but I still had some trepidation going into the stores themselves. I thought it
yeah,
was weird going into a predominantly women's clothing store, clearly there for no other purpose than to hit on the clientele. And I thought, I've never done this before. And the really funny thing is, when we did that, remember there was a security guard. And the security guard noticed what we were doing and said, wow. He pulled me over and said, wow, your friend is legit.
yeah.
And I said, well, he does this for a living. And then the second time me and you were out, when I said, you know, like I told you the time before, you're going to see more authoritative stops from me and you're going to see the result from me. You're going to see me go into stores now and you're going to
Hmm.
watch me. You're going to watch me do it. And I did do it with you. Still, you know, felt fine. Felt great. It's really no different once you just put that out of your head. And just as fate would have it, even though we were in a completely different part of town, completely different store, there was the same security guard. Remember that?
Yeah, that was insane, dude. Dude.
And he said, how are you guys? Are you just in here, you know, firing on chicks? And I said, that's exactly what we're doing. And, you know, that kind of gave me an additional boost, right? Because I felt like at the very least, not going to get into any kind of trouble with the little authority in this store. That's not
Yeah.
going to happen. So that was just a funny, crazy thing that only happens when you're out doing this stuff.
And honestly, yeah, that when I say zero to no approach anxiety, yeah, I don't know. Like, I can't even sit here and say it's completely goes away. Like, dude,
Right.
there's always a little bit of anxiety. Like, I don't know.
Hmm.
Like, when I mean like overcome that stage, it just means basically like it's not controlling you, where you can't make the move when you want to make the move. That's an issue. Like that's when it's a
Yes.
big problem. Like when you're able to override that little voice, when that voice gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's just like whatever, it's a nuisance, and you just go act. And anyway, the more you act in spite of that voice saying, "Nah, don't bother, there'll be another one," or whatever excuse the mind is coming up with, and you act in spite of that, then little by slowly that voice it carries no weight anymore. It doesn't completely ever, I don't think, ever go away, because every new day we're given, it's a clean start, and you're back into a world with peer pressure of tons of other beings who, no, who aren't a cold approaching. So there's a tremendous amount of peer pressure to kind of just stay in your lane and not open. You don't want to be noticed and all this stuff and follow, just what society's doing and everything like that. What is society anyway, right? It's like, isn't that to be social and to socialize with people? Because that's why I think an instance like a security guard will smile, or you think that all these people are like hating you, but it's like they'll actually be like, low key wanting to do that themselves. We're here to
Yes.
socialize with each other and be an interactive society. That's why some
Yeah.
of these poorer towns have more relationships amongst themselves. When we're isolated amongst each other and we're just not even making eye contact with each other, that's a broken society, in my eyes. So it's like people want to do that, we're not causing harm. And that type of stuff that D described, it's happened to me numerous occasions with other clients as well, where the security guard in a store will be like, "Yo, who are you guys? What are you guys up to?" And we'll end up like, "Yo, give me your number," or like that. Bro, I'm telling you, people want to do stuff like that. They want to socialize. They want to have no inhibition when it comes to approaching a beautiful woman in a store. Like, that's not illegal. That is absolutely not illegal. In fact, we're probably changing something at a very small level of like people being a little bit more open to the guy saying hello to them. We don't want,
Totally agree.
yeah, to be so isolated and separate from people where there's no communication when you're out in the world and in society. So that's a huge factor. And like I said before, to top off the comment about women coming as a byproduct with money and all that, like the caveat that I don't have a problem with that, but the caveat they never mention is that it's probably just going to attract a bunch of gold diggers, if anything. It's not, you're sacrificing that for getting a bunch of sugar babies, and you're still never addressed the real issue. You're still a pussy, you're still this, you're still that. You're leading now with something that is outside of yourself, instead of coming from a true place of confidence within you that has made a noticeable shift. And now you just have a walk with a different swag. You didn't change anything. You changed your bank account, and now you're attracting a small subset of women who are smelling you and using you for money.
Yes.
Right.
So that is
So,
true. There are only two good uses when it comes to women and money. And it's not the car, it's not the clothes, it's not the watch, it's not any of that stuff. It is facilitating fun. You will probably then have friends who are likewise successful, and they've got fun toys and boats and stuff like that. And so your dates themselves can become more appealing because you have a more fun lifestyle. That's number one. And number two is it buys access. So if you want to go to the bars and the nightclubs, and the restaurants that are more exclusive, that
mm,
filter out lower socioeconomic people, there are some of the hotter chicks are going to gravitate to those environments. They are not necessarily gold diggers. They just want to be around successful guys. Who doesn't like nice stuff, right? So it buys you access, but the man himself still has to present himself in front of them, and that's what she's making her determination on. And that's really what is making her feel something. If the bank account stuff worked, well, then why wouldn't I just flip open my phone and say, hey, here's just my one investment account, right? Here you go. See the dot? Now aren't you all wet? No, we all know this is not the way this works. That would make me the king of all douchebags. So no, that by itself, it just doesn't do anything. So those guys
Surprisingly
are
enough, there's so
completely
many
wrong
guys.
in that way.
Sadly enough, bro, it's there's so many guys that actually, are doing that stuff. I mean, they are leaning totally into that because, and it's kind of unfortunate. I'm not sitting here knocking them. It's just because like they never really worked on this. And like I've said at the beginning, this ability to sexualize, be extremely flirtatious, sexual innuendos, build sexual tension,
Yep.
have like a strong sub communication, good eye contact, good tonality, not afraid to pause and not afraid of uncomfortable silence and build, a lot of sexual tension. Like that stuff needs to be practiced. Unfortunately, some guys get it quicker than others, but by no means, I guess there are a few lucky guys born with this ability and they just get it real quick. But for most men who are always in this platonic back and forth conversational state, on top of the fact that society is actually, demonizing guys for doing that,
That's absolutely true. Yeah.
so there's two factors working against most people is that this Me Too movement, that's creepy, that's crazy, be a gentleman, what Disney tells you in movies and rom-coms. It's like fucking, so there's a lot of different things working against us. And that's why I say like, iron sharpens iron, like to not have some sort of brotherhood to do this, to get through. I would have never been where I'm at today if it wasn't for, a boot camp with a bunch of guys, who gave me permission and were encouraging you to do that. Like, oh wow, this exists. Because I thought I was the black sheep and nobody, I was being reprimanded, condemned for this type of behavior. So it wasn't until I was given permission, not only by myself but by my peers and people encouraging, knowing that this world, the underground world, exists of guys wanting to improve and get better with women, and it's not a bad stain on you by sexualizing, and that sex, that stuff is important. That's why we're all fucking here. We seem to forget that. Like, our mom and dad met and they built something. They had sex at some point, and we're sitting here. So I don't know.
And
It
they didn't
shouldn't
have Tinder.
be. Exactly. Yeah. My dad met my mom at a bar. So at some point, she liked him enough, and he had enough swag to pull it off. So, I
Right.
mean, it's been going on since the dawn of time, before cell phones, before everything. You know what I
Right.
mean? So men and women have built, and I would argue that it was more, guys were more incentivized to actually work on themselves more back then. We're given so many outs today with technology. We're just given another obstacle to getting to the root of the issue, which is truly changing from within, from the inside out.
No question. It's one of the few times you will hear me say, I'm thankful to be an old guy because I got to grow up in a time, I got to have an analog adolescence. There was no other way to do it.
Mm,
You had to make the move in person because there was no fake online virtual profiles interacting with virtual profiles world to resort to. And it's
yeah.
really funny. Me and you had a good conversation considering that. I have one dating app open right now. It's Bumble. I get something from it. I get a pretty consistent queue. But again, I get just way higher quality in person than I do online, strictly through the lopsided competitive nature of the dating apps.
Mm,
But me and you were talking about how we you and I have different default states, different raw material. So for you, you already are naturally so much of a sexual threat and sexual presence that for you, having a girl on the side where you can get laid regularly, you've got that reference point, whatever it might be, it sort of dials you back a little bit so you do not appear too eager. And that works in your favor. But for me, if I have a steady queue of online chicks, or I've got this chick on the side and I can dial her up whenever, I am at my best when the deck is completely clear. Because I derive validation from different things in my life, from being productive, from getting my prayers in the morning, working out, this and that, all these other things that for me, I need to dial up the sexual intensity. There needs to be a sense of urgency from me. That gives me a little bit of an edge. So, a
Yeah, you're
completely different completely different stimulus because it's being applied to two different guys, or rather same stimulus, same situation, but it's being applied to two different guys.
this is some
So,
serious game that you. This is like real. Sorry to interrupt, but this is serious game that D is dropping right now. You won't hear this anywhere else. This is deep love. This is like it's so overlooked. You know what I mean? Because we're all sold a bunch of like, you're on the surface level type advice. Very much, generalizations and cookie cutter stuff. But like this is an insight that I just had the other day having a conversation with D on the phone, and I was like, wow, you know what? You're right, because I was giving him some sort of advice, like maybe it would be beneficial to just be smashing out some girls in a rotation, and that would kind of signal to the world that you're good and that you're relaxed and that other women desire you and are infatuated with you, obsessed with you, want you, and it just kind of like relieves that sense of like neediness and coming off too thirsty in a person, which I still believe is very applicable for a lot of men out there. But
yeah, a lot of guys, I think that's the
yeah,
case.
that's very useful. I think that's still very, very useful, and even to myself. But like, listen, I can't say it's for everybody, and like when he said to him, he likes coming off, other things are boosting his validation, which is huge. Like this is some deep game, and that he doesn't really need that fucking booty call that is gonna make him come off less thirsty, because guess what, he's a little bit more laid back in his sets to begin with. So him with that, thirstiness actually works in his favor. He can lean into that thirstiness a little bit more. If I'm
Right.
too thirsty, it's just there's an imbalance. There's an imbalance there. It's too
Yes.
much.
Yeah, there's a good balance that needs to be struck. And you and I we're different men. We took different paths in life and we approach it from literally two different angles. So, one of us needs to dial up in one respect, dial it back a little bit in another. And for the other
Mm-hmm.
guy, it's dial it up in another respect, dial it up in a different respect. So yeah, it was an interesting revelation we had when we were talking the other day, because I mean I it absolutely performed better that way. I think I was even telling you were asking me one day like, hey, what'd you have to eat? And I said, absolutely nothing, dude. I bang down water and coffee. I do better when I am physically hungry as well as horny and like sexually charged, and really need to just look at the phone and it's like, oh, do I really have that many options? No, I got two or three weak leads. This isn't going to go anywhere. Time to fill up the phone. That really gets me motivated. It's some of that is also just my personality. I've been like that since I was a kid. If I could fix it, I would, but my major flaw as a man is that I can be complacent when things are good. Whereas if things are chaotic, I'm never more calm or focused. When things are going badly, when I've got a deadline, when my back is really up against the wall, I'll concentrate and work really hard with very little sleep for a pretty extended period of time. But if things are good, I tend to get a little lazy. So, if the dating app's blowing up, I think I told you I just got back from LA and I showed you a screenshot of all the chicks I was chatting up just off Bumble in LA.
Yeah.
And you were like, well, what have you done in person? And it's like, nothing. It's like that dulls my edge. And that's
Yeah.
not a good thing for me because I always get it's way more fun. And you're getting real interactions with real people. You're getting a real vibe, real immediate feedback. There's really nothing like it. I mean, I'm 45 years old and I still find it fun and entertaining no matter really what the outcome is. We get a lot of crazy stories that other men will go their entire lives and never even have these experiences or these stories that they can share that become a part of them because they are never willing to risk it, never willing to just man up and do it. And we do get to do these things because we're willing to do them. And
And like you said,
yeah, go ahead.
Dan, can you hear me well? Is it
Oh yeah,
okay?
yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, good, good. My phone was dying, so I had to plug it in. But yeah, like, and we were also, like you said earlier, we were fortunate enough to grow up in an area where, it was, fight or flight. Either you were gonna suck with women, or you better, throw yourself in the fire and man up and try to, learn how to speak to women. Like we weren't really given an alternative option like the young men are given today that are handed phones right off rip, and they just digital is now officially primary way of communicating and stuff. So it's like that wasn't the case for a majority of my life and as well as yours, and it's like we were dealing whether it was just our guy friends would come knock on my door. We in-person interactions were primary by far, and digital was a far secondary in terms of ways of communication. Now it's the complete opposite. You know what I mean?
It's all
So
true. And that's intensified in South Florida where everybody wants to curate the perfect Instagram online profile, whatever it might be, right? A lot of them, shoot, are actual influencers, OnlyFans chicks, monetizing their beauty in a million different ways that I didn't even know was possible until I started living down here. But I'm just not I'm not interested in any of that. But B, I remember strolling through Brickell with you and you said, look at so many of these people around here. They look like they have dead eyes because everybody's just plugged into their screen, primping, worried about what everybody else is thinking about them, whatever it might be, right? And it's just soul sucking. But when we go up and have real conversations with these chicks, it's almost like we bring them back to life. I remember that one like 22-year-old chick where we were pretty much all over each other in the middle of the day. You said after we exchanged contact information, she walked away. She even bumped into something. Like she was like dazed from the emotional experience that she just had. And it's almost like you're bringing some of these chicks back to life. Like, hey, pay attention. There's real life happening right in front of you.
yeah, we're at a deeper level. We're definitely like I genuinely feel like we're helping out society in a way where we can go out there and I always say, like, think of it, my game really changed a big time when I started really going out there and just spreading positive vibes and speaking to, everybody in my environment and not just targeting my, ideal girl. Like, I just felt like that gave me unnecessary pressure, and I was way too attached to the outcome and seeking a particular result, as opposed to getting just kind of lost in the sauce and like when you're having fun, you just
Hmm.
fun, and all of a sudden you're less attached to a particular outcome. It's just common sense to me, and I never really implemented that, to go out of my way to really be, pleasant with everybody in my surroundings, whether it's the doorman, not everything has to be a set. Just get out there and socialize, because guess what, when you're in a social state of mind and you're feeling good, you're more desirable to everybody, and it's just like it's easier, things just flow a lot easier from that state of mind, as opposed to I am out sarging looking for my ideal woman and everybody else does not exist. And then you're not really doing anybody in the world a favor, really, to be honest with you. You just like, one thing I think I'm known for is just being extremely friendly with a lot of people out there. And It's just, I think the way we're supposed to live, and like a lot of people don't want to do that, but you go out of your way and make somebody else's day, or something I've recently like implemented with a lot of clients and myself. It's a home run and almost hits. It's got like a 90% hit rate. You walk up to a two set, maybe even in a couple that looks like they're noticeably holding hands, and you say, you guys are the cutest couple I've seen all day. Like, you guys are gorgeous. Like, it just, their face 9 out of 10 times lights up. They're thankful. They want your number. They're giving you a pound. Thank you so much. That was so nice of you. Wow, babe. And it's like, you could see that it brings either them closer together, and then it's also led to a bunch of other fun, cool stuff where, no, he's just a friend. He's my cousin. Go out and experiment with that, because the pressure's off you, and it leads to a lot of fun, cool things. And people genuinely light up from that one. So I've started really implementing that, like, to get in a really good state. And it's almost bulletproof in terms of just getting a really good feedback, you
Yeah,
know?
I remember you actually getting a really cute girl's phone number from a big dude who was wearing some kind of jujitsu t-shirt. And you did the, hey, you guys are a beautiful couple thing. And immediately the guy actually assisted you. And they both
Oh,
said, oh, no, 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 we're not together.
oh,
And it was really easy for you to
yeah.
get that girl's phone number. And she was a super cute chick. I remember that. But yeah, that is something that I've seen you do, of course, over and over and over. Yeah, 9 times out of 10, it's a hit. Uh, It is not something that I adopt. And again, this is because we're two kind of different guys with different raw material. You've said over and over that you're a little bit more of a naturally introverted guy, that
Yeah.
it took a little bit for you to overcome just basic social steps, right? Where you were just being more social, coming out of your shell a little bit. It took a little bit of time. Whereas I lean more extroverted naturally. I'm not a crazy extreme extrovert who has to talk to everybody,
Yeah.
but I definitely lean more extroverted. So for me, it doesn't take a whole lot for me to be in a sociable or talkative mood. It does take a little something for me, and this is something, even as late as this is in my life, it does take something for me to kind of dial up the sexual threat and the sexual presence.
Yep.
Instead of being just that, oh, he's a professional, decent looking, fun guy. Well, the big component was missing. And you said it to me. You said, look, if you just sprinkled in something here or there, if you just interrupted her and hit on her with a compliment here or there, touched her here or there, that's going to go a long way for a guy like you. And it did. I mean, it was immediate. I was back in my hometown recently, and a friend, I walked into this bar, and me and this brunette, tall brunette, cute chick, all glammed up, kind of my type. We just sort of locked eyes. I noticed her immediately, and I guess she noticed me. And there was this tall, bald dude just hanging all over her, just pawing all over her. So I went over, and when I introduced myself to her, I could tell that she wanted to talk to me, but it was heading in a more platonic conversation because it turned out that she also lived in South Florida. And I thought, oh, here, this is kind of a weird coincidence. Here we are back in the Midwest, both visiting our parents at the same time, but we both live not 25, 30 minutes from each other. And,
Mm.
the other dude kept trying to intrude. And it wasn't until I just went full Scotty mode, stroked her hair, and said, "Where'd you get all this beautiful dark hair from? You Italian? Like where?" And she goes, "No, Italian is the only thing that I'm not." And like she really, she took like a little half step toward me, let me put my hand around her waist, and then that bald dude that was just trying to bomb me out in the first place, he just slunk away. He just left. So, a little bit goes a long way and puts you really on the right path. And, one other thing was she said, "All my friends are super hot. and your voice popped into my head again. She said, we should all hang out. All my friends are hot. And I just said, what about you? You're hot.
Mm,
And she goes, oh yeah, well, I'm here. I'm single. It's like all that it just puts you on the right path. Everything issues from the right premise when you start with that sexual of a frame. And that was something that needed addressing from me. That was all there was to it. And you picked up on it immediately. So, I mean, for anybody listening to this who is considering getting coaching from this guy, he is the guy. You are getting the professional set of eyes who can take a look at and evaluate who you are and where you want to be, tell you what's lacking and what isn't. He didn't
mm,
come to me and say, I want to build a Scotty model, a Scotty clone with you. You immediately said, okay, you're this kind of a guy and you do well in this kind of an environment, but you need to do this. You got all these other components, but this part's missing and it needs to be dialed up. And when I just listened and did the results were immediate. And they've only continued to get
yeah,
better.
the result. Yeah, the results and the thing about D is that he took the advice and he took it to heart, and he's not playing around. He's actually serious about wanting to change. So as uncomfortable it might have been like for him, he immediately took the advice and applied it. So that's a big that right there is a huge factor. I could, you know, say something to somebody over and over and it bounces off their forehead, and it's just going to take a little while, for some people to actually implement it and apply it. Even in person, I could turn into a drill sergeant. I could be more soft with you, but whatever it is, some people are just, they're ready and they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they're ready to change. And they'll take the constructive criticism and implement it immediately. And guess what? You get immediate changes. You start to see immediate changes, and that's happened with other guys I've worked with, like my boy Andrew, who's, I had a lot of similar guys in a sense to D. I think a lot of the guys that came from Good Looking Loser, share a lot in common from other dating coaches. Like
Sure.
like the me and Chris motto is just, we felt like we were good looking dudes. We didn't fit in with the pickup community, and we were just
Right.
underachieving, that mindset. And those guys tend to, like, you know, they take it in stride when they say, like, because girls are interested in them, like by first look, like we've accomplished things in life. We're rated above average on most women's objective scale. Like, we're all generally pretty good looking guys, and we're, we have good, like, whatever it may be. This is who usually, I'm not saying all the time, but like I get a chunk of these guys that I feel like dating coaches don't get as much.
Yeah.
Whatever reason, Good
Yeah,
Looking Loser
I'm sure that they
resonates
don't.
with them.
Well, the other stuff
Yeah, yeah.
never
So
resonated
yeah,
with
you're
me.
right.
The other stuff felt and sounded just cheesy. It just did not sound like anything that would come out of my mouth. So, to what I would say in terms of
Yeah, I
underachieving,
think we filled
the
the reason Good Looking Loser really, in my honest opinion, I don't want to go off of that. The reason I think it was like it filled a void. It filled a void for guys like me and Chris. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, Brad P said, I think I'm going to bring you out to LA. And there's a guy in the pickup mansion who doesn't seem to be getting along well with all the other guys in the house. And you and him, to me, are going to be a really good match. I want you to go out there and kind of lift his spirits up a little bit, work with him, spend some one on one time with him. And then, we just hit it off from there, because we were both getting similar reactions. We didn't, we both like sports. We were both into lifting. We were both into supplements. We were, manly men who on paper didn't look like we should be having any issues whatsoever with women. And here we are, involved in this pickup community thing, which needed a good balance. It can't just be all, nerds and dweebs and incels and
no,
dudes who haven't looked at a woman in years. Like, there's got to be, where's the room for the guys who, on paper look like they should be doing better with the underachieving underachievers, straight up, like the guys that still need some coaching to get better. You know, it's about optimization, right? And it doesn't. We're just not optimizing our potential and our results from where we are. It's, you know,
Exactly.
you can't compare this to that guy. It's about where you are and where your results should be and where they can be, you know, like, and that's the room to grow and reach some of those yard marks, you know. So yeah, I mean, the results can change pretty quickly, and I felt like they did for me, they did for Chris, they did for D, they do it for my client, you know, Andrew, who had a very similar issue as D. Like, he just, girls were looking at him, he was getting looks that he didn't even
Hmm.
notice. And that's why a coach is necessary, is to see these things that you're not picking up on, these
Hmm.
IOIs from that, you know, are they really? Nah, not really. I'm like, yeah, they are. They're looking at you more than me or whatever. They just need that slap in the head to say, bro, these girls are interested, man. And women are not going to overtly say something. They're going to show subtle cues. And that's what I'm looking for. And, you know, once you tell the person, hey, you absolutely need to be more assertive, stand in front of her. Don't just give the, hey, how are you, over the
Yep.
shoulder. And she's begging you practically to say, like, yo, stay and set and talk to me. And that's the same issue Andrew had, the same issue Dan had. And it's like, once they just needed to see that and step in front of these women and lay it on them thick, so to speak, and just hit them with it, the game and the riz factor, the swag, and just, you know, be willing to sexualize with these women. They're there for the taking. It's there for the taking, man.
That part was
Um,
huge. That part was huge for me. And as relates to underachieving, it's pretty simple. Do you have your dream lifestyle? Then you're underachieving when it comes to your income, your business and your income. Do you have the dream woman in your life? Then you're underachieving when it comes to women. And that is the way I felt. Not that I couldn't get a woman or even, a whole flurry of them, but it wasn't the dream girl. It wasn't these, the kind of girls there where you're 10, 11 years old, you're staring up at the little poster or whatever as you're drifting off to sleep at night. That was always what I wanted. I wanted, the dream car. I wanted to live in this area and I wanted the dream girl. Well, the dream girl is lacking. So what do I need to do to fix it? And I appreciate the compliment that you said, hey, I took the advice, was humble enough to say, look, you tell me what to do and I'll do it. In this scenario, you're the coach, I'm the student. That means you tell me what to do and then I do it. Um, but a lot of that was simply my business brain kicking in, saying, hey, I paid a lot of good money for this guy, for the best expert in the country to come and take a look at this. What am I going to not listen to what he has to say and do what he tells me to do? No. And I'm certainly glad that I did because it made a really big impact.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's fantastic. And like I said, it's just been an honor working with you. It's been an honor to get to know you. And I say that from the bottom of my heart. And
Same here, man.
listen,
Same
we,
here.
we all listen, everybody's not for everybody. And I'm okay with that. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but like, I don't know, we seem to really hit it off. And he's probably be a friend for life, even when he's feels like you've met
Consider
the
you that way. Yeah.
and I can almost get choked up because it's like, guess what? You know, life's hard and it's a lonely path for a lot of guys. You know what I mean? And being single is not the same. It's not equivalent to a woman being single. In my
No.
humble, I have a sister. I know what it's like when a girl signal. She does. You know, attention is always going to be there. It's just always there for them. There's always somebody.
Yes.
There's some dude out there who's thirsting after girls. Like, it's just so much more common. It's the way we're wired. So they don't really quite know what this lonely path and being single is about. And it's a bummer. It's not. So brotherhood is essential. Okay. So I've been a good student. I feel like the good students know how to become good coaches if they allow it. So I know what it takes. It's definitely like D has mentioned, not cookie cutter. And guess what? That's how I was taught by, I believe, a very underrated coach, Brad P. He recognized that it's not cookie cutter. We're totally different types of people, and I kept putting my trust in this man. gave him a lot of money, to do one-on-ones and fly him out to Long Island and work with this guy extensively because I felt like he was a genius. I thought he was really smart. And he didn't, this guy looked like a Tommy Lee type guy, 6'5", punk rocker. Like he looked like, and he was a musician. He liked canned routines. He was kind of like a mystery on steroids. Like he took that to a whole new level, and he started winning best pickup artist of the year back to back. But the guy was really smart. He was a social worker and just had a very intuitive mind, smart dude. And he didn't push or force any of like his routines or systems on me. But at the end of the day, he learned that it wasn't about that. He knew what my strengths were, and he just wanted me to lean into that. Like he's not going to change something that is naturally coming out of this person. You're getting good results using it. You know,
Right.
he,
Right.
never a big fan of going super direct, but I had that. I had that to just come out of me at a very, very early stage when I started cold approaching, and they all decided they were really big on default openers. And even my default opener at the time was like, all right, you're the cutest girl I've seen all day. Just keep using it. Use that so you don't have to. They basically give those so that it's like you don't have to think about something. But I ultimately kind of push for the guy to stumble and fumble upon his own shit a little bit. I'll give
Yes.
you a opener, but I'd rather a guy give his brain some freedom and to use some of the material in the environment, because there's so much that you can and use. And when you're focused on your lines, you're quite literally going to overlook the potential for a genuine connection when you notice something that on the woman right there that you can use, to connect to your creative mind. Um, when you're so wrapped up in a set of lines and what comes next, and everybody's so used to a step by step program, and it doesn't really map out into real life. you
No.
know I should have said that would have worked. It doesn't. There's so many variables, I mean, to it. It's just like, it ultimately, the opener needs to be discarded at some point. It's good maybe for a little bit if your brain is really, riddled with anxiety and you just need something to say that you don't have to think about. It's only going to get you so far, and then you got to throw it away. But
Yep.
um
Funny, I've tested that. After I started taking a couple of sessions with you, then the chicks that I was going out with, I would ask them afterward, do you
mm,
remember what it was that I said to you? And they light up and they're like, oh, of course I remember. And then they never remember.
mm,
They say, "Oh, you came right up to me." There was one girl, they tend to dramatize it or romanticize it. There was one girl, I had to move one guy out of my way before I said hello to her, told her she was beautiful or whatever it was that came out of my mouth. And she said, "I remember you walked straight up to me, you pushed some guy out of your way to get to me." It's like, well, this is a little bit there's a little poetic license being applied here. That isn't quite the way it went down, but I certainly wasn't going to interrupt her version of events. But they never remember the words that come out of your mouth because what is it, 85% of communication is nonverbal anyway.
mm,
So it really is, does this guy have presence? Is this guy assertive? Is this guy a sexual threat? Those are the things that they are picking up on, and that is what they feel. And then they just fill in all the gaps afterward with whatever they want. Oh, he shoved guys out of my way. Oh, he was really protective. He put his arm around me. I've heard that before too. But they never remember the actual words. So yeah, openers are, you could say hello. The other day, there was a super hot blonde who I actually had confused with another super hot blonde who
mm.
lives in my neighborhood. And I just walked up to her and said, "Hey, Trump girl." And she was like, "Hi." And it was the wrong girl. But I said it with such authority and such familiarity that she thought we knew each other. And then there was some guy also stopped at the street corner trying to hit on her. He just skulked away. You know, he just like, oh, now this guy's here, and this guy clearly knows her, and I had no idea who she was.
Yeah, that's a prime
Just
example
this
of that.
super hot blonde chick wearing a Trump hat. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, dude, and I think it speeds up your process a lot quicker when you just, are willing to give yourself the permission to just stumble and fumble upon whatever you say. Like, because I already have remedies to that anyway. Like we call it like nervous guy game. If I genuinely feel nervous, immediately I'll like call myself out and expose myself in a way where I'll be like, oh man, wow, what are you doing to me? Like I'm literally like frozen up, and it seems to diffuse any sort of nerves. And she goes, oh, what are you nervous about? Ha ha ha. That's crazy. And then it just immediately kind of goes away.
Hmm.
It's I forget where that I learned that. I think it's back when I was in like recovery or AA. It gets weaker, your problems, when you let, whether this dates back to like old confession, you know what I mean? Like where you now said it to somebody else. Okay, you don't let this negative emotion or thought harbor and fester and poison your entire day. You just call it out, you expose it, you confess it in a way, and it just kind of diffuses everything, and then you're on to your normal conversation. You move on in the interaction. I don't know, it's called nervous guy. Oh wow, you're making me so nervous. Look at this. Wow, I don't even know what to say. You're beautiful. Whatever it may be, you just diffuse it, you move on, and boom, it's done with. So there's
Yep.
things to overcome fact that you may not know what to say next. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Um, yeah,
Sure.
it's
I
it.
mean, I've also done the reverse of that. You know, if I'm hitting on a girl, but she's got a couple of friends with her, and it seems like one of them is being a little bitchy and giving me a little bit of a hard time, whatever it might be, I'll do the reverse of that, and I'll point that out as well. And I'll say something like, "Oh, your friend doesn't like me as much as you do. We're going to work on that. That's okay."
Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like not being able to confront any of these things that we may notice. That's what it's about, really. Honestly, like it's like you miss so much if you're just worried about the lines. And here I just want to make one point. How come it's always this way when a beginner or somebody who doesn't trust in their own ability to strike up a conversation with an attractive woman, how come they're the ones that are always like, what do you say? What do you say? What are you saying? What are you saying? It's all about the words, words, words to people who don't
Right.
know or trust in their own presence. You know what I mean? Their
Right.
subcommunication, if to the ability to understand at a deep level that what you say ultimately should just become background noise at some point, where you're once you've had a couple pulls, you know, with minimal words, minimal game and
Hmm.
verb, that's when I think you have a realization that like, yo, this isn't that important, man. When you're really in like a good back and forth with a girl and there's just good connection, good eye contact, like, and your words are almost just background noise, and you're just like off you go with her in the backseat of your car or to your room, and you're like, wow, you trust in yourself. Like, the first time I wanted to shoot content with Alex or whatever, he's like, rate your cold approach. I just said, I don't know, 7.5. I don't know. So like, but I just trust that I knew I was going to be able to perform. I've done it enough times, and I'm not concerned about what I'm opening with, what I'm transitioning with. All that stuff is really beginner dialogue that it comes from a place of insecurity and just a lack of experience, because you don't need it. You don't need it. Your sub communications are so strong, and you've already seen time and time again, like you just said, when a girl goes, I don't remember, I think you said this, and she's way off base. It's because
Yep.
she's making her feel real good, and your presence is rock fucking solid, and you weren't shaky. A lot of that stuff with what are the words, you peel that back enough, it's just a bunch of fear and anxiety and nerves, and you're just afraid to pull the trigger. A lot of, I
Yep.
mean, I remember a good looking loser getting knocked for too much action. Take action, and that's the goal. Take a lot of action, um as opposed to all this technical advice. But like it neither could really, that aspect cannot be overlooked enough. Like, you need to first get the basics down pat, where you have that killer instinct and the ability to just walk up, make good eye contact, and assert your dominance in a way, and be that sexual threat.
So
That's basically it.
I mean, that applies to anything in life. You will eventually learn by doing. By doing and by failing, you will eventually learn. You will never learn a thing if you sit around reading things, theorizing about things, and you never even take the first active step. You'll never learn a thing. You'll never do anything. You'll never accomplish anything. You'll never learn anything. It doesn't matter how much theorizing you do back and forth. So, ideally, you should be able to do some amount of preparation and then a lot of action. That's just not really the way life works out, no matter what it is, whether it's chicks, business, anything. You really have to learn by doing. So I
Yeah.
fall heavily in the camp of take the action. Do the necessary work on yourself first so that you are appealing to a certain percentage of chicks. That's one
Mhm.
thing that we haven't covered in this call is your approach ratio or whatever, blowout ratio. It's pretty rare that I get a really bad, harsh rejections. But if I do, it's just water off the duck's back. It's just really not a big deal because the next girl might light up like a Christmas tree and might be even hotter and cooler. So, I would say somewhere around every second or every third chick will give me a phone number. And like I said, since I started training with you, that number for the number to date to conversions, that part has skyrocketed. They're no longer just these flimsy numbers that these girls give out because it's like, oh, this guy's fun and I don't know, maybe he's got a fun lifestyle or whatever. We'll see down the road. Or maybe they were just give me the number because they were bored. They wanted to get rid of me. Who knows? Whatever, it's not even worth my time to go through and analyze that. The only thing that I was interested in was changing the outcome, getting more of these girls that I really wanted out in front of me in a sexual context on dates. And training with you has been just very transformative for me in that respect.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for the you know
Thank you,
the
dude.
yeah. Thank you
And
for
we're
being
going to keep
here.
doing it because, like I said, there's really no ceiling on this thing. And I feel like I keep getting better and better and better.
That is very true. Every time I go out, I think there's certain people that are always looking to improve in a lot of different ways. It's just like, where there's no ceiling to this. There's no one telling us that, okay, that's it, you're good to go. Like, there's always room for improvement because we're always in flux, we're always growing, we're always changing. We're getting older, our biochemical level, our everything is changing all the time. So it's like there's always room for improvement, I feel like.
Yep.
I even heard that you spend time in monasteries and with guys that were enlightened. It's like they always would say, like, there's room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. That's a like, there's room for improvement to be a better coach. Every time I go out with D, I feel like I can get a little bit better coaching, or be a little bit, even a little, like he said earlier. And this applies to not only pickup or to whatever. Minor tweaks can lead to some massive changes. So
Hmm.
we made well, not huge. We made a minor tweak to what he recommended. Like, listen, I don't need to see you demo anymore. Like, I'm good to go with that.
Right.
We'll have some fun at
I think I,
the night.
I think I told you I already know Michael Jordan knows how to dunk the basketball. I don't need to
Right.
see you do it over and over. Like, I already know you could probably pull 5 chicks a night that you are highly attracted to that are objectively cute chicks. I already know you know how to do this stuff. I want all eyeballs on me for every interaction so I get the best use of my time. And, really using you as a coach and not just visualization because I've already got that part down.
Mm. And anyway, that was a tweak that we had made, and I never, to this day, and I must have worked with at least 250 guys, maybe more. I've always been demoing and gaming kind of side by side, varying from here and there. But this first time I legitimately did not, focus on any sets or any of my eyes were glued to this guy, and it was, I think, one of our most productive sessions
That
to
was
date.
when I got the 12 phone numbers. That was the
Yeah,
day.
it really forced me to dial in because, and I also didn't know until you actually try it, that how emotionally invested you get in your own stuff. And I don't need that extra distraction. I really don't.
Right.
And it's become
Right.
a little bit of a distraction working with the student. It's not about me getting laid. Like, a lot of coaches don't realize that. I hear a lot, from other students that, oh, this coach was, it looked like he was just showing off the whole time. Like, yeah, there's this need to, like, want to prove that you're legit, but like you said, after the first couple times that they see it, that you're kind of good to go, man. You should be focusing on the student at that point, because it's amazing how distracting that stuff could be. It
Yep.
really is.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah. But we fixed it. We fixed it right away. And, then we saw even greater improvements. So, because I wasn't looking around thinking, well, where'd Scotty go? He's probably wrapped up with some chick someplace. And, you usually were. You're like a magnet for a lot of these chicks. And I just said, hey, I know this is sort of an unusual request, but I don't even want to see you open. I already know what rock solid presence looks like in my head. I'm a tennis player, but it applies to any sport, and it applies to this as well. That if you've got a picture in your mind of what the right stroke looks like, tennis, golf, swimming, can apply to anything, right? If you have the correct picture in your mind, you'll eventually get there. That's the coach's job, to say, okay, you already know what to do. Let's just iron out these tweaks so that it looks picture perfect. So you're doing it every single time. Doesn't mean it works every single time. God knows, I'm very, very happy with it if I get 20, 30% of the chicks that I'm hitting on. I think that's a big number. Guys don't realize this because we don't know what's going on in their life. They could have the boyfriend, the husband, the five dudes they're talking to, the zero dudes that they want to talk to right now, whatever it might be. We don't know what their life circumstances are that they're bringing to that moment. And that's usually a big factor on whether or not, and also you just plain might not be somebody's type. I was telling you, I was just walking back from dinner with a friend, and there was a hot chick sitting outside by herself at a wine bar. She's probably in her 20s. And I went over and hit on her. And I could just kind of tell, I could just kind of immediately feel like I am really not this chick's type. So no big deal, right? You just
mm,
go on to the next one. You wish her a good night. She was very complimentary about it. And that's pretty much it, right? So that was the big improvement that we made, was, your eyes were then glued on me and you said, okay, there was this, there was that. Very occasionally you would say that went really well. The only thing you could have done is maybe even booked a hotel room, right then. Like, that chick was really hot to trot right then. You really could have taken her someplace. That was pretty much it. But when we made that adjustment, it showed a big difference.
yeah, when you start, that might have been our last session. Like, with this guy, I would say 3 or 4 sets, he was drawing wood, and and then he just, this that's when it made me real proud, because that was like, typical Scotty stuff. I often, actually, if you'll see a real set, I'm always like, look what you did, look what you're doing to me, and like, they laugh and giggle, they fucking love it. It
They
just
do love
shows
that.
your balls, and like, your
Scotty, you there? Scotty, I lost you. Whoop, Scotty, you're back. Lost you.
Yeah. Sorry, man. Are you
Nope,
there?
no big deal.
Do you hear me?
Yep, can hear you great.
Shit, man. I was so scared there. I was like, hopefully this, I'm always nervous that I lost the whole fucking thing. Okay.
No, we're good. But yeah, that absolutely did happen, and it was a lot of fun. At one point there were these two hot Italian chicks or something that were visiting in from Canada, and I said to the one friend, "I think your friend's trying to grab my dick," and she's like,
Yeah.
"No, no, I'm not, but I like it." And I did kind of use your line there. I said, "Look what you look what you're responsible for. Look what this and look what you're doing." And, she would just giggle and laugh. And she was like, I know, I like it. Another one that texted me right away, but we just didn't have, we were on a time crunch. She was only in town one other night. And quite frankly, I had other hotter chicks in my phone from that session in that day. But that would have been, if I was just mission focused on pulling a chick, that would have been just an immediate teed up smash if
Mm,
I wanted that. That was another one that was just there for the taking.
yeah. And that's another thing guys need to realize also. It's not cookie cutter. Like I don't think Dan is hyper focused on how many did you lay? Because there's gonna be a lot of guys in these comments like, oh, how many chicks has he pulled? How many this, how many that? Like, dude, it's this guy is really more geared towards looking for someone long term. So
Yes.
he's not as pressed to get his dick wet. You know what I mean? So
Dude,
this
I got to tell you, I lost count around 30 or 31 years of age. I can't remember how old I was, but I do remember specifically losing count. And then after that, yeah, like I was still kind of doing it to have fun. And of course it's fun. But that's not my primary goal. My primary goal is to have five, six, seven super hot, really high quality chicks that I can pick a good one from and have something very long term. I'm 45 now. I want to move on to the next station in my life.
mm,
I've already been through the phase where I was sort of running through a bunch of chicks. Now I'm at a point in my life and I'm geographically at a place where I can pick from some of the hottest chicks. Let's just make sure that they've got some character and some quality to them as well, and that they would make a good suitable long-term partner for me. That's really what I want. But in order to do that, you got to get in front of them. You got to have sexual presence. You got to be a threat. You've got to do all the things that you coach up.
and honestly, can't you say, Dan, like this stuff? The reason I think Dan is a repeat customer and he understands the idea of really honing in on this is because life gets in the way a lot, man. And it's even for myself, like it's you have to be really diligent with this stuff and like to stay on top of it and always sharpening the sword. It's
Yep.
or it will go away. Like if you
It
just
does
stop
get
doing
dull. Yep.
it will go
Shoot.
away, and it will you'll never fully go back to where you began, but you will lose any sort of like momentum that you've built on. You know what I mean? And I feel
Yes.
like, including myself, you have to just it's something that just isn't really a part of our day-to-day life. It's not really in our repertoire of flirting and sexualizing and pulling day to day. And now if you were to do that on autopilot, I had a 7 year, 6, 7 year run of doing it every fucking day. That's why I know I could roll out of bed. And if someone says, here's a mic, we're going to go get some infield footage, I know that it's just like, I'm not worried. I know some good shit's going to go down. I know I'm going to have a lot
Yep.
of girls attracted. That's how, because the proof is in the pudding. The experience is there. And I just trust in the ability because of the amount of work and blood, sweat, and tears and the reps I put into it that I don't, it can easily become just autopilot for me. Not to say that I can't slip back into just, peer pressure and not open at times. It happens occasionally, but it's less and less for sure. It takes
For
a lot
sure.
of years, man. It takes to make that a part of your complete identity, character, and autopilot. Boom, you see, you go. Especially when you're not on a boot camp, and that's the idea. We're not always going to be on boot camps. We're not always going to have sessions. So the key
Right.
is to have it, bleed into our day-to-day life where you haven't been in a social mood and you're just banging out, able to bang it out in a minute, in a moment's notice. There she is, go, and you run pretty fucking solid game. You know what I mean? That's the
Yep.
idea.
Hilariously speaking, sometimes it's literally running, right? Like I remember Scotty is so good at picking up on people's body language. We were beating the streets in Brickell, and he just saw some kind of hesitation or some kind of head movement from me. And you said, "Was there something that you saw that you like?" And I said, "Yeah, that girl in that red, short workout shorts and tank top over there." And you said, "Well, go get her." And I had to like run across the street, and that turned out to be the best one of the day.
Yeah. Well, wait a second. I mean, if we're talking about the 12 in a day, there was at least two or three that were
That's true
elite
too.
level game that I was literally, I was just so proud and impressed. I didn't really know what to say in terms of even making corrections there, other than like, bro, you could have really got if you had better logistics. Like these were down. They were DTF, bro. There was no doubt about it. They're solo. There's no reason why. Like with those a few of yours, they would have been kill sets for me. They would have been back seats. Oh, hey, babe, my car's in the back seat. Or don't even mention it. You kind of just lead. And that's where he goes to show that she's so into you. She's so emotionally driven in that moment that she's ready to go. Her pussy's soaked. As his dick is hard, you better believe her pussy's wet too. And that was my only critique at those points that, like, wait, why are you coming back to me? What's going on? And that was it. That was my only sort of critique in some of these sets that it's pretty elite level game. It's very elite level game. You know what I mean? So it's proud to see. It's good to see. And it's just a matter of putting in the reps, I think, with D at this time.
Oh yeah.
And, it's honing in on a few things because I feel like he truly believes he's capable of slipping up from time to time. And I think the more
Oh yeah.
you ingrain this in your subconscious and your autopilot becomes where your day-to-day errands you're running, where all your sets almost feel like you're drawing wood. That's where I want you to get to, where your day-to-day life, if you're running errands and you see a girl and on site you pull up on her and shit, and you're like, wow, that was phenomenal. Like that's when you're like, oh shit, okay, this is really good. But if you're having too many moments where you know those daytime sets are just kind of like, they're okay, not too bad. I want you to walk away feeling like it's bled into your day-to-day life, and all these sets feel like I can really pull them into a car or whatever, and it's really sexual and it's phenomenal. Like, I get, and I'm not one of these people who buy that. Listen, if it's wifey material and because he's looking for a wife, do you really want to pull her into the back seat of your car? Yeah, I do. I don't believe that. I don't think that is going to make any sort of hindrance on whether or not that girl is a long-term prospect or a short-term prospect,
I
because
agree.
the beginning and the end is compliance, and the ultimate compliance is her surrendering and giving her body to you. She gave your body that quick to you. In fact, there's a good chance if she really, really fucks with you and likes you, she will hit you up and be like, good morning, how are you? So, time is arbitrary at that point. She could be a long-term prospect. There's plenty of girls
I
that I've
agree.
had long prospects, and time is really, it's about the connection, how quickly she's willing to lay down with you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
No one's keeping score, and if anybody's keeping score, I think you're off the mark. You're off the mark. It's
Yeah.
not. No one should be keeping score when it comes to, like, falling in love with a girl and stuff like that, and having a genuine connection with some girl. Like, there's no scorekeeper. So the quicker, whatever, quicker, faster, slower, whenever you smash a girl, it could be long term, could be, but that's the beginning. That's that's just the start of whether or not it's going to be a long term or short term. But that's the beginning of it. That's absolutely the beginning.
Yep. All right, man. Well, speaking of life getting in the way, I got to wrap this up. I actually have
Yeah,
another flight I got to catch tomorrow afternoon. But after that, I come back on Monday, and me and you are linking up again because I'll be here. No travel plans, nothing interrupting, getting in the way for the next couple of months. So we're gonna go. We're gonna go hard.
absolutely, man. And thank you, D. Thank you for sharing this. Hopefully, you guys
Anytime, man.
got a lot of value out of this and some insight. And we'll see you on the next one, man. All right, brother.
Sounds good. All right. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Later. Thanks.
Yeah.